सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंदा हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। Hare Krishna. Today we will be discussing from Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter 1, text 15. Panchajanyam Hrishikesho Devadattam Dhananjayah Poundram Dadmau Mahashankham Bhima Vrukodaraha. So in the previous verse, Krishna was introduced along with Arjuna, and Sanjaya explained that they sounded their transcendental conch shells. Divyam Shankau Pradadmatuhu. And now here it is explained what are those conch shells. Krishna is being called as Hrishikesha. He is the master of the senses, Hrishika Isha. And so he blew his conch shell called Panchajanyam. Panchajanyam Hrishikesho, and Arjuna is being called as Dhananjaya. His conch shell is named as Devadattam. So Panchajanyam Hrishikesho, Devadattam Dhananjaya, Poundram Dadmau Mahashankhaha, Bhima Karma Vrukodaraha. So what is Bhima's conch shell named as? Poundram Dadmau. He blew his Mahashankham, the great conch shell. Bhima is being called as Karma Vrukodaraha, the voracious eater and the performer of Herculean tasks. So in Srimad Bhagavatam, there is a story of how Krishna obtains this Panchajanya jewel and the conch shell from a demon that he kills. There was a demon, Panchajanyam, Krishna killed. He had a conch, and Krishna took that conch, and that became his conch. Actually, that is just a historical narrative when Krishna appeared, how he got the conch. But actually, this conch, the Panchajanya, is his eternal associate and paraphernalia in his spiritual world. It is always there with him. But when he appears in this material world, there is a particular pastime by which that particular paraphernalia comes to Krishna by a particular narrative. And the paraphernalia comes and meets his beloved Lord like that. So that's how Panchajanya came to Krishna. And Arjuna here is being called as Dhananjaya. As we know, Dhana means wealth. So Arjuna helped Yudhishthira by procuring wealth. When Yudhishthira needed a lot of wealth for the Rajasuya sacrifice, he summoned his brother Arjuna, who, by the help of Krishna, he went and obtained the wealth. Krishna advised him some portions of Bharat, where the Brahmanas in those times, they would be, the previous times, they would be given a lot of golden vessels and plates when they were offered for prasadam, when they were offered prasadam. And the Brahmanas, they didn't need these golden plates. They would just go and dump in a place. And so they were all stocked up. And nobody knew that except Krishna. And Krishna advised Arjuna to acquire those wealth. So, like that, Krishna advised Arjuna to procure a lot of wealth for Yudhishthira. Therefore, Arjuna is being called as Dhananjaya. The other reason why Arjuna is also called as Dhananjaya means is because Dhana refers to wealth, not just material wealth, but the spiritual wealth. He had the spiritual wealth of Krishna consciousness. That is the true wealth than the material wealth we have. So, therefore, he is being called as Dhananjaya. So, importantly, here, Krishna is being referred to as Rishikesha. As I said, Rishikesha means Rishika Isha, the Isha, the master of Rishika, our senses. Prabhupada explains Lord Krishna is referred to as Rishikesha in this verse because he is the owner of all senses. The living entities are part and parcel of him. Therefore, the senses of the living entities are also part and parcel of his senses. The impersonalists cannot account for the senses of the living entities, and therefore they are always anxious to describe all living entities as senseless or impersonal. So we need to understand this concept very nicely because Prabhupada, our Acharya, he talks about it many times, and practically throughout the world, this impersonalism has become very prevalent. A lot of doctrines they propound this impersonalism. What is this impersonalism? They say that ultimately we are spirit souls, which we agree, we are not this body. But they say that the spirit soul does not have a form. The spirit soul does not have any senses. It is impersonal, some kind of a jyoti, inexplicable jyoti, because jyoti also has a form. But they say that it is avyakta. Avyakta means unmanifested form or unmanifested. There is no form. But throughout Bhagavad Gita and also in Vedic scriptures, the right understanding is that the spirit soul has form. And because the spirit soul has form and senses, the body, the material body we have, also has senses. Just like the shirt I wear, it's nothing but a piece of cloth. But how come the shirt has the hands and the pant has the legs and so on and so forth? Is because we have, the body has hands and legs and the senses. So, similarly, the material body also acquires these senses because originally the spirit soul has senses. And similarly, where do these senses come from? It is said that Janmadi Asya Yataha. Krishna, the supreme absolute truth, ultimately he is the supreme personality. He is not a formless, impersonal Brahman. Many big commentators, very prominent commentators, renowned for their scholarship, hailed as great philosophers, they term Krishna to be impersonal and they tweak Bhagavad Gita's messages to suit their philosophy. Like one big commentator, he also was a he held a very high position in India. He commentated that, oh, Krishna, the person Krishna is not ultimate absolute truth. There is something beyond the person Krishna, the soul Krishna, who does not have a form, that is absolute. That is ultimate. So Prabhupada, he brings up this quite often and he quotes Bhagavad Gita and several times Vedic scriptures to prove that how Krishna as a person is the ultimate, not that he is impersonal and something impersonal beyond his person is ultimate. For example, in 7th chapter, 7th verse, Krishna mentions, Mattaha parataram nanyat kinchidasti dhananjaya mai sarvamidam protam sutre manigana iva. So he says, beyond this form, Mattaha, as you see before me, Mattaha, Parataram. Parataram means higher than this. There is nothing higher than what you are seeing in front of you. So, in other words, there is Krishna's body is not different from Krishna. Like we have a body, but we have a soul. I'm not this body. I'm spirit soul. My soul is different from the body. But Krishna's body is not like that. Krishna's body is transcendental, is non different from him. Krishna, the soul, is non different from his body. It's all one. There is no difference. Advaya Gnana. So, Prabhupada from Bhagavad Gita and Vedic scriptures, he proves that ultimately Krishna is a person. And we are all persons because we are all emanations from Krishna or God. Mamayvamsho jiva loke, jiva bhutaha sanatanaha. So, therefore, ultimately, just like Krishna has senses, we also have senses. But the owner of the senses is Krishna. We need to understand this point very well. Why? Because if we don't understand, we can misuse our senses. Just like if we don't own something, say we are leasing something. Sometimes people, they say, oh, as long as I used to have one friend in college. So when I was going to the temple and hearing Bhagavad Gita, and I would come back and he would ask me where you went, and I would tell him, this is what we study from Bhagavad Gita, this is what we chant, the Hare Krishna mantra, and so on and so forth. And he said he had a very unique philosophy. He didn't need to practice Bhagavad Gita and all of that. What is his philosophy? He said, um, I'll say in Telugu because he was quoting it in Telugu, Bada padaku, bada pettaku. So that basically means don't worry and don't put others in worry. So he said, yes, I live life according to this philosophy, and there is no need to follow anything else. If you don't worry about anything, you are happy. And you don't put others in worry, you are happy. So one may say similarly, following that philosophy, I drink wine, for example, to be happy. And in fact, wine is good for health. Many times people come up with this argument, wine is good for health. It removes a lot of it keeps you healthy, and they quote all of different whatever is suited for their belief research. And so I'm not going to disturb anybody. I'll drink up to the limit so that I can drive also. I don't fall under DUI, don't get arrested. So what is wrong in doing all this? So let's say, for example, I heard this incident quite some time ago. There was this apartment community in US. So there was a cleaner who was going to the swimming pool every day, and he would clean up the surrounding place and come back. And so he observed one day that the swimming pool is always very clean. And by the time he would go, it's always very clean and nice and all of that. So he was thinking, who was cleaning this? And so he came a little early that day, next day, and he saw one guy who doesn't belong to the community. He was happily swimming. And after he swam, after he used all the facilities, he would clean up the place nicely as if nothing happened. And he knew that the cleaner would come at this time. He would go well ahead of that time. And so he would jump the gate and all of that. And so this cleaner caught him. And he found out that he doesn't belong to the community. He took him to the leasing office, and they complained to the police, and the police came, and of course nothing happened. They didn't arrest him, but they reprimanded him for encroaching upon their property. And so the reason why is, somebody may argue, oh, okay, he's, after all, he's cleaning up the place. He's keeping it very nice and tidy, and it's okay. Let him use the property. But that's not the law, is it? That's against the law, isn't it? Encroaching upon others' property, because anything can happen. He can open the door for others, and everybody can misuse the property, and he can spread germs in the water, or he can, by not being very careful, he could have let a small child enter, and who knows what could have happened. So the point is that if something is not our property, let's say you lease your apartment and you start to paint whatever you want, you start to change the walls, break the walls, and beautify it. You cannot go and tell the leasing office, oh, I'm just, after all, beautifying it. It's even better for you. But the leasing office would not agree, isn't it? You cannot do whatever you want because it belongs to somebody else. You have to respect and honor however you are supposed to maintain it. So, therefore, this body and the senses, we have to honor and respect however it has to be used as laid down in the scriptures. You cannot misuse. In fact, nobody can keep the wine under limit, because eventually, as you drink little more, as you keep drinking little bit, the same thing that gave you that whatever happiness, it wouldn't give you happiness after a week. You have to increase the quota. And as we know, it results in addiction and so on and so forth. And then you cannot stop yourself from hurting others. Even by walking, you are killing people. Even by talking, you may be talking very nice thing. You may be saying a good thing to somebody, but they may get hurt. Especially nowadays, people are very, very sensitive about things. The next generation is very sensitive. As you see in social media, so many things are happening. Small thing is taken out of proportion. So anyway, the point is that our senses are leased. They actually belong to Krishna. They need to be engaged how they are supposed to be engaged. The Shastra says that the senses have to be used for serving the master of the senses. ऋषिकेन हृषिकेश सेवनम भक्ति रुच्यते सर्वोपाधि विनिर्मुक्तम तत्परत्वेन निर्मलम ऋषिकेन हृषिकेश सेवनम भक्ति रुच्यते. So hrishikena means our senses have to be used for serving Hrishikesha. That is called bhakti. That is the proper use of our senses. The Shastra also says a wonderful example how we have to use, or this tree, the tree has to be watered on its root, not on the parts and parcels. If you try to go and water the leaves and branches and fruits, the fruit is the very essential part of the, or the actual productive part of the tree. You may say, oh, let me water the fruit, the most important result of the tree. But what is the use? The essential part, the fruit itself, will wither and die away. It will not even come up if you don't water the root. So, similarly, for us to be happy, we have to serve Krishna with our senses. Actually, that is real happiness. But currently, what we are thinking is happiness is enjoying our senses. So, what is this serving Krishna, serving somebody? We have been enough, under somebody's rule. Like for example, India got freedom from British. See, under we were serving the British, we were never happy. See, the freedom means we should not be under somebody. What is this serving somebody? The slave mentality. We are now free, free to think. We should be free to think and not serve anybody. But actually, you see, either you are serving Krishna or serving Maya. You may think, I'm free, now I can do whatever I want. But it is actually, you think about it, you're always serving somebody. You're serving your family members, you're serving your boss at office, you're serving your community, you're serving your nation, or you're serving your dog or a pet. Ultimately, you're serving your senses. So, what is the problem in serving my senses? So, the other day I was distributing books and Bhagavad Gita, and there was this man. He was asking, what is the message of Bhagavad Gita? So, I was telling him how this soldier Arjuna, he was confused in life and he represents all of us. We all meet confusion and we all are morose. We don't know what is our purpose in life. We are all wandering without purpose and always unhappy, sometimes maybe happy. But why this duality? Why this distress? Why this confusion? Why this depression? And so the same doubt Arjuna had. And so this Krishna, God, he gave this knowledge how to lead life, purposeful life, happy life by serving him, being directed by him. So we know our purpose. We can understand what is the right happiness for me. And he said, no, I'm happy already. I don't need to. I'm not confused in life. I have purpose. I want to enjoy. I have a family. I have a good business. So why do I have to take Bhagavad Gita? So I turned to this page in Bhagavad Gita where it had the picture of these five horses being drawn by this charioteer, and then there was a passenger in the on the chariot. So basically, the point is this horse, the charioteer is you see the face of the charioteer. He is confused and bewildered, and basically the senses, the horses are going wild. He's not able to control the horses. And there is no proper direction. One horse pulls you to one direction, the other horse pulls you to another direction, and it is going astray. And what to speak of the passenger? Poor guy, he needs to go to the destination that is told, and this charioteer is not able to control, and most likely he will end up in a big accident far from where he needs to go. So I told him the problem with living a life of sense gratification is like this, thinking I'm happy, satisfying my senses. Because the senses are pulling in different directions. You will be forced to go in a awkward direction. You'll be forced to meet misery. Sometimes I tell the students in when we discuss about the sense, why the sense gratification is bad. I gave the example of, like, for example, say you're eating food. So obviously people love to eat food. Wherever you go, you see restaurants and people literally they like to spend a lot of money and time eating food, going out, venturing to different places. Why? The essential ingredient which gives taste to food is salt, isn't it? Without salt, you cannot eat food. But just because the salt is giving the taste to the food, if you keep on adding more salt, what will happen? Yes, a little bit more salt will make your senses excited. But when once you get used to it, you need more salt. Say if you keep on adding more salt, what will happen? The taste itself becomes tasteless. You cannot have it anymore. And the salt also destroys your body. It's not good for health, isn't it? So the same thing which gave you happiness and taste, the same thing is actually killing you. The same thing is making you renounce that happiness. So similarly, just because the senses give you happiness and we get onto the path of sense gratification, we become just like this passenger on a wild horse driven chariot, or eating uh, over salty food, which is not good for our existence. So, the right understanding is that the senses need to be regulated. Yes, we have senses, we need to also have sense happiness. The right understanding from scriptures is that don't overindulge in sense gratification, but regulate and purify. And once it is purified, you will find the higher happiness, the original, real happiness, the watering of the root. That's how the real fruit is nurtured, nourished, becomes healthy. Giving food to the stomach, not to our individual parts. That's what gives strength to the body. So when you serve Krishna, that's what gives you happiness. But the modern world is hiding that happiness. Bhagavad Gita is presenting us that happiness. Yam labdhva chaparam labham manyate nadhikam tataha. If you find that happiness of serving Krishna, the transcendental happiness of serving Krishna with our senses, then we will not look for this lower happiness anymore. This Maya is presenting us the lower happiness, but we need to go across it, to go beyond it, and find that higher happiness of serving Krishna. And that is why Krishna is being called as Hrishikesha. So, a fortunate living entity like Arjuna, he will accept to be directed by Krishna instead of directed by Maya or directed by senses for sense gratification. So, Prabhupada mentions here, therefore, in the case of a pure devotee, Krishna directly controls the senses. Here on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, the Lord directly controls the transcendental senses of Arjuna, and thus his particular name of Krishikesha. So we can also become like Arjuna. We can also become transcendental when we agree to be directed by Krishna. And that is our constitutional position of eternal happiness. I'll stop here. Anyone else has any questions, you can unmute yourself by pressing the star 6. So there's one question here on the chat. You can also put your question in the chat. What was the shirt example you gave? It gets its shape. It's a very good question. The what I was mentioning was that the shirt is nothing but a piece of cloth. Ultimately, the cloth is nothing but piece of threads, which is ultimately just material. It doesn't have a form by itself. The cloth is just one piece of cloth. It doesn't have a form. But the tailor gives its form based on your body. You go to the tailor, he will measure your hand length. Oh, this is how the hand has to be. This is how this is where the neck has to be. This is where the buttons have to be, and the pant. The how the legs have to be. So the shirt or the cloth gets its form because the underlying body has a form. Similarly, the body itself is a material body, and it got its form because underlying spirit soul has a form. We cannot see the form, we cannot see the spirit soul, but suffice it to say that ultimately the spirit soul has a form in the spiritual world, And when it comes to the material world, it acquires this material body. And just like the shirt gets its form based on the body, similarly, the matter gets a form based on the spirit soul. So that's the idea. I hope that clarifies your question. If not, please ask. The next question I have. Yes.
Guruji, I have a question. Few days back, you said that uh, when people take think about the envious people, they also they start resembling them. Like you were giving the example of Duryodhan, that when he thinks about Bhima, he, that nature kind of inflected on him. Can you elaborate that part?
Yes. So that was in the previous class. Thank you for asking that question. I was trying to tell enviousness is not good for us because I was giving the example of how if you envy somebody and you tend to focus on and criticize on some qualities they have. And so you, the more you meditate on those qualities, Bhagavad Gita says, Dhyayato Vishayan Pumsaha Sangasteshu Pajayate Sangat Sanjayate Kamaha Kamat Krodho Bhijayate. So the more you meditate on a person, the more you meditate on those qualities of that person for which you hate, you end up getting those qualities, acquiring those qualities because the mind, the more it thinks, the more it acts on that, the more it exhibits those characteristics. So the more you dwell on anything. So the very thing you hate, you possess that thing. So why you hate somebody? Why you envy somebody and possess those qualities, the very qualities that you hate? So that is the point I was trying to make. So don't become envious of somebody. So that's just one of the tools you can use theoretically to convince yourself not to become envious about somebody. So I hope that clarifies your question. So we have another question in the chat: how to serve Krishna with senses? So very good question. So we have senses. We have eyes, ears, tongue, skin, hands, legs. So Srimad Bhagavatam, it explains how to serve Krishna with our senses, as exhibited by Maharaj Ambarish. Savai manah Krishna padara vindayor vachamsi vaikuntha gunanu varnane karau harer mandiramarjanadishu shrutim chakarachuta satkathodaye. So in this way, all the senses of Ambarish Maharaj, Maharaj were explained how they were used in Krishna service. So, in order to engage the senses in serving Krishna, first you have to focus the mind on Krishna. Savai manaha Krishna padara vindayor. You have to engage the mind in thinking of Krishna's lotus feet, and naturally, all the senses will engage in serving Krishna. Like Vachamsi Vaikuntha Gunanu Varnane, you have to use the words in describing Krishna. That means you have to use the mouth in describing Krishna. You have to use the eyes in seeing the beautiful forms of Krishna. You have to use the ears in hearing Krishna Katha, the Tattva of Krishna. You have to use the nose in smelling the flowers offered to the lotus feet of Krishna or the incense offered to Krishna. The hands in washing, engaging in cleansing the temple of Krishna. The hands, the legs in walking towards the temple of Krishna. Of course, these are all basic examples. But anything you do for serving Krishna with your senses, like you are working day out, day in and day out with your hands, legs, eyes, mind. So with that, you give the result to Krishna. That is also serving Krishna. You may take care of your household duties, raising child as a uh, homemaker, but you take the duty to raise the children in Krishna consciousness. So that is also serving Krishna. So serving Krishna can be permeated, can be done in varieties of innumerable ways because that's our constitutional position. So anywhere there is a will, there is a way. So these are just some pointers for you. Hope you understand that. All right. Thank you, everyone. We'll end the class here.